Class, so we can start.
Great.
Thank you. Okay, dokie. So, let me introduce you, right? Just a couple of minutes. I'm going to speak in Spanish, and I'll be back with you. Okay? Thank you.
Perfecto.
Ok, so muchísimas gracias. Aquí tenemos al coach Clayton, que pues él nos va a estar eh, platicando en esta sesión, pues acerca de las posiciones que necesitan un poquito más de habilidad, ¿vale? En estas posiciones vamos a encontrar lo que pueden ser siendo los quarterbacks, wide receivers, defensive backs y los running backs, ¿vale? Más que otra cosa, pues justamente aquí, si ustedes tienen alguna pregunta, no se limiten en alzar su manita para, pues, preguntárselo directamente. Si quieren hablar, bueno, si saben hablar en inglés, se las mandamos sin ningún problema o escríbanla y ya yo se las traduzco para que pues, el coach pueda responder sus preguntitas, ¿vale? De todos modos, vamos a estar aquí haciendo pues una serie de preguntas directamente al coach para que nos esté apoyando en este día. ¿Vale? Entonces, thank you, coach. Thank you, coach, for being here. I mean, it's a pleasure always to be talking with you and the Academy. Thank you for joining us today.
Of course, I'm glad to be on. So excited.
That's good. Thank you. Thank you again. Um, okay, so just to start, as we discussed previously, the topic for today is the skill positions. Mhm. So, for example, QBs, wide receivers, D-backs, running backs, right? The objective of this day is going to be explain, or it's going to be to explain the coaches the reason why these positions depends only the speed, right? And
Mhm.
of course, the the metrics, right? Why the weight or the body weight impact in the way as the player develop in the field, and how we can fix that, or how we can um, take this take our players to a new total level. Okay,
Mhm.
perfect. So my first question would be, what physical qualities um, stand out in elite skill position athletes?
Yeah, I think it depends obviously on the position itself, because of course there's multiples you talked about, quarterback, receiver, DB, running back. I think in particular from kind of going one by one, quarterbacks from a physicality standpoint, obviously, I don't necessarily have a preference on a tall or a shorter quarterback. For me, obviously, if you can play football at a high level, that's all that can really, your mindset, your physical traits, but more so physically, being able to throw the football, quick release. For me, that's a physical nature of the game. Being able to get the ball out fast. Obviously, being able to be strong and athletic is a big thing too. So regardless of what your height is or your weight is, the ability to be athletic now, every quarterback is different. So, not everybody can be running a 4.5, 4.6, but if you can be elusive enough to move the pocket or to evade a blitz or evade a breakdown in the pocket, right? That's a biggest thing. So just the ability to move in space or move in the pocket from the quarterback position would be obviously a very good intangible trait to have. At the running back position, of course, again, we've got small guys, big guys, but from a skill set standpoint and just physical traits, again, lateral movement, right? Being able to move in quick spaces on cuts, in between the holes, getting into space. And obviously, if you have somebody that wants to get to the second and third level that can continue and break pass, that's an elite type of athlete that allows you to turn, 5 to 6 to 10 yards into explosive plays, 20 or more plus yards. Receiver and DB, those are obviously positions that, again, a lot of different types of body types. We have guys here who are 6'4", 6'5". Some players are 5'9", 5'10". And they all have their own skill sets that make them well what they do. So in particular, just knowing the type of body you have. So if it's a bigger receiver, the ability to catch balls in traffic, right, using your body, your size advantage to what you do. And if you're a more, shifty slot receiver or somebody that works more on route running, being able to get in and out of breaks. So I think there's a lot of variation, right, in terms of the physicality of the game. But the main thing is being able to master as a player, obviously as a coach, trying to get out of the players what they do well, limiting their weaknesses, but at the same time trying to improve upon them as much as possible. So.
Okay, that's awesome. And in your opinion, what separates a fast athlete from a truly game-changing athlete?
Training, and taking a certain way. I mean, we see a lot of guys who have speed, who have, quote unquote track speed. And there's nothing wrong with it. You need to be fast in general, but sometimes it takes a while to translate track speed, linear speed to a football environment, right? So that's a big thing is being able to transition just linear speed, 40-yard dash speed to a game situation. But to your question, what separates the two, it would be the effort, the amount of technique in terms of your form you run, obviously training you put into whether it be yourself or somebody helping you do that. So I think that that's a big part of it because obviously there is a like as I kind of alluded to specifically at the running back position when you see guys who do what they're supposed to do, get to the second level, past the offensive line, get into that linebacker, they're getting 6, 7 yards a pop. But then when they get to the third level, they're able to run by safeties who are fast. So I think that's the biggest thing is, when you find guys that get in the open field and can turn a bubble pass or a outside zone play to, 40, 50 yards, that's very dynamic. And as a play caller, it makes your job a lot easier to have guys that can do that, of course. So.
Okay, that's great. And what kind of drills you would recommend to the coaches to use? I mean, what are the drills that you use?
Yeah, our strength staff does a great job. Coach Darren Musson, he's the head of our SNC at the NFL Academy, has a background, University of Houston, USC, played University of Alabama, Nick Saban. So he does a fantastic job with our guys. I mean, we do kind of periodically throughout the year. Obviously, we play football in the fall as far as our season, and obviously we get into more strength and conditioning from January to about March, which is our kind of our off-season time. So a lot of that is periodic. So it could be, explosive movements through some plyometric days, as far as being able to get out of your jumps, your breaks. Then we have specific days that are built for more linear speed, right? We have build ups of as far as we'll kind of build it to a 5 to 10 to 15 yards, and we get out the gate at about 20 yards, and we're bursting to 40. So it really depends on the phase you're in. But if anything, for me, the biggest thing to build speed is explosiveness, right? How explosive can you be? Like there's a lot of guys that can run a 200 meter, but in reality, football is stop and start, stop and start. It's a lot of change, and we're not constantly playing like, for example, basketball or some other sports, for example. Obviously when we go, but there's a lot of time in between, whether it be a huddle offense or the play is stopped. You have to be able to burst in that time change. So.
Yeah, sure, of course. I mean, every sport is different, right? Every sport is different, not only in this part where the athletes must perform differently, right? But uh, um, also in this biomechanism that our body uses, right? Because it's not always the same amount of energy that we use, and always is explosive, and always is very fast and very quick, and all the players at the same time are doing different tasks on during the plays, right? So I think that's something really interesting that happens in the football. And why do some athletes test well physically, but struggle to create that separation or that reaction during the games?
Well, in terms of, I mean, because obviously, for example, football and a lot of sports, you have athletic people and athletic young players. The difference is in terms of transitioning that skill set to a game environment. I mean, in my opinion, it's going to be repetitions.
Mhm.
More practice playing football. For example, here, we practice not all year round, but very close to it. We have off-season time as far as more training and more camp tours in the summer. But for me, when we have players that come from different backgrounds, regardless of where they're from, if they're from Mexico or Canada or Japan or wherever they're from in the world, because at the academy we have so many different players, and some players come from non-football backgrounds. If they come from basketball, or they come from soccer or rugby or whatever it may be, and they have a very high skill set athletically. But to your question, how do you transition a reaction to football? Well, you need repetitions. You need to do it over and over again, right? So it's the training you take in the off season. How do you apply it to your football season? Well, in every practice you have, regardless of the amount of reps you take, you need to maximize those and learn as much as you can. And also something, for example, that I tell our players here, like even if you're not getting a rep, let's say you're the backup or the other guy is getting a rep you're not taking physically, you can still take the rep mentally because ultimately the more reps you can take, you can learn and you may be able to learn from somebody else's mistake so that way you don't make the same mistake. So that's the biggest thing.
And as a tip for the coaches, how we can manage that. I mean, of course, we want results. Of course, we want big plays, right? But during a practice, how can we manage that part? Because we have to give the opportunity to all the players, right? Because probably some of them are in their last year of player, so probably they're not going to be in the next year. So we need that the youngest players have more repetitions and more practice, right? How
Yeah.
can we do that?
I think it comes down to just preparation and planning throughout the year. So if again, I don't know the exact schedule as far as chronologically through for the structure of the schedule there. But for example, as I talked about, for us, every period of the calendar has a specific emphasis, right? Every time we do something, regardless if we're playing football or not playing football, the weight room and the classroom, we try to have an emphasis on it. So for example, like for us. Spring football, we just finished our spring practices, I think last week, a couple weeks ago. And as you talked about, right, it's an opportunity for younger players to get more reps because the younger players are going to be having opportunities to compete in the fall for a spot on the roster to play and travel games. So, as you said, I think the biggest thing is just really also to your question as well, how do you maximize it? Well, you teach it off the field first, right? So for example, for us, we always tell our players we want you to play fast. And what I mean by fast, I don't just mean running fast. I mean processing fast, like understanding what's going on. So for example, like right now we're having meetings with some of our recruits that have committed to play for us next year. Some, for example, from Mexico or other places that haven't yet joined our organization yet, our team yet, but they will be here in the fall. And we've already started doing Zoom calls and learning the playbooks and learning the offense because, again, our goal is to help them process faster. And if they can understand more of what they're doing before they get here, it allows them to get here. And they'll still of course make mistakes when they get here, but hopefully we can limit it. And then when they have the opportunity to practice, they can maximize those repetitions. So that's the thing I would say is just preparation and whatever the way that is. But we always say, if you have a problem in something, you can't complain about it until you have the solution for the problem. So we always tell people that if there's an issue with any timing, we'll just think about ways creatively, right, to make it work in the best way you can. And it comes down to preparation. That's the biggest thing. So.
So you would say that it's not only a work for the coach, it's it also a work for the well, it's a task for the players, right? It's a mandatory.
It goes both ways. I think, there's a saying where I come from, you can you can take a horse to water, but you can't make the horse drink the water, right? So meaning you have the resources to provide, whether it be the coaching, obviously as a coach, you take ownership and if a player's not doing something correctly, you think, how can I teach him, coach him better, of course. But at the same time, it's a relationship that goes both ways, right? So you're trying to give as much as you can for him to learn or for her to learn the process. And it's the same thing. They have to be willing to go above and beyond to become better because at the end of the day, it's their it's their result. They're the ones playing, right? I'm retired. I'm not playing anymore. So their success is through their work and through the time they put in, as well as obviously me helping them and facilitating do that. So,
Yeah, totally agree with you. I mean, that's something really awful that happens very often because at the end of the day, we are dealing with teenagers, right?
mhm.
So it's like you can tell them and you can give them all the information that you have, all your knowledge, right? But if they don't want to apply that, if they do not their part, is like and they are not doing their job. So yeah,
No, exactly. But I think as I kind of talked about, it also comes back to an ownership standpoint because sometimes I have to ask myself, where am I teaching this effectively enough, right? So there, there's always a saying, it doesn't matter how much I think I know. Let's say I think I know a lot. It doesn't matter. It's how much I can teach somebody else, right? That's the biggest thing. How much they can learn from me because ultimately they're the ones again who is playing. And my job as a coach is to make it as simple as possible for them to understand and play at a high level. So,
and I have another question. What kind of qualities are the most difficult to teach at higher levels?
do you mean in terms of physically or just in general?
Both. I mean,
Yeah.
physically and mentally, because I think that that's something that we have to consider.
I mean, I guess in terms of physically, I mean, obviously you can't teach size. Like you're either really born with that or you're not. But I would say just the mindset or from a physicality standpoint, from a skill position, right, is not necessarily quarterbacks, but running backs and maybe some receivers as well. The mindset of toughness, I would say. I mean, that's a characteristic I think you can kind of callous up. Like for example, Coach Hagan, our head coach, has a saying here: we callous our players. Like for example, when you work out a lot, you get the calluses on your hands from working out a lot. It's the same thing where at first it's going to be you're going to be sore, you're going to be tired, but eventually you have to push through it over and over and over again. Eventually you get calluses because it helps get through the workload. So toughness is not necessarily hard, but at first it can be challenging because I think depending on the age of the player or depending on his or her background as far as athletics, it can be like, oh, I'm tired, I'm sore, but in reality, that's going to happen, especially at an elite level. Everybody's going to get sore, tired to some extent, but there's a difference between being hurt and being injured. Obviously, if you're hurt and you can push through a small, minuscule thing, you have to push through it. Now, if it's injury, it's a whole different thing, obviously, but it's understanding the balance between those two. From a mentality standpoint, I would say the consistency really. We got players, I mean, at the academy or just in general, I've seen when I played college football or I've been around high school football, it's consistency because there's a lot of players who have talent. That's not that that's a lot of people can have talent, but are you willing to be putting the work in every single day? That's more challenging, right? Like for example, if you have a job, if you go to your job once a week, you're not going to have that job no more. So it's the same thing where just because you do a good job one day doesn't mean you're guaranteed every other day. So you have to put the work in every single time. And it's the same thing with our starters here. We always tell them like, hey, our job as coaches, the reality is from a recruiting standpoint, my job is to out recruit you. That doesn't mean it's going to happen, but that's kind of the mindset where we're trying to get you guys better every single day. So that way you're not complacent. So, for us, complacency is not a good thing. We want guys to be always pushing and striving to be better and that goes into being consistent and that translates to every part of life. So just kind of to reiterate, right, from a physicality standpoint, just toughness overall, and then from a mentality standpoint, just the ability to be consistent.
Okay, thank you. And you talk about fatigue during the season. How can fatigue can affect these speed positions during the season? Because again, it's repetition after repetition after repetition, right?
Yeah.
How does this fatigue affect our athletes?
I mean, fatigue's, football is a violent game, right? Not just on top of the fatigue element. So, but it goes back to a saying, Jerry Rice, for example, everybody always talked about his 40-yard dash. It wasn't elite or whatever, but when it came to the fourth quarter, he was running by everybody because he had elite conditioning, right? So I think at the end of the day, You have to obviously be fast and run and jump and all these tangibles. But it goes to back what I just talked about, consistency. How consistent are you as far as your conditioning and your training? Because if I'm going to get a guy who's going to give me 120% in the first quarter and he can't give me more than 50% because he has an inability to be conditioned, right, because of fatigue, it's a hindrance, right, as a coach or just his ability to do things. So I think that's the biggest thing is, your best ability is your availability, right? And if it's the fourth quarter overtime and you can't go as a player or you can't go because, the lack of conditioning and training, that's a big part of it. And again, a lot of that goes back to, again, the offseason preparation. And everybody's different. Everybody's bodies types are different. Everybody's backgrounds are different. But, as a key component, the better condition our players can be, the more impact they can make, especially when it really matters in the fourth quarter, overtime, whatever it may be. So that way, when critical situations occur, they are ultimately ready to make success out of it.
Okay. So basically, what you're saying is that everything is on the preseason, right?
A lot of it, I mean, a lot of it is, I mean, you think about it like if I want to go run a marathon and I haven't been preparing for a marathon, I'm not going to be able to run it. So like I may still not be able to, but my point being is you have to prepare for it. You have to, anything in life you do, you have to make sure you put your best foot forward. That's anything. So um, for me, preparation is a huge part of what we do. And as a coach, it's a huge part of what I do. So from a player standpoint, if you want to be successful, you have to envision success. And to envision success, you have to put yourself in that position.
Exactly. Totally agree with you. And how, I mean, if you can give us some key points for the practice for this part of, you know, um, what drills the coaches can do or must uh, prefer for their players with this on these positions.
In terms of just, you mean just the position drills itself or for fatigue or what do you mean?
Yeah, for the positions.
Okay, gotcha, gotcha. Yeah, again, I kind of go chronologically or not by position. So from a quarterback perspective, again, there's a lot of different drills you could do. I mean, for me, the biggest priority I have with the quarterbacks that we train here, at least, is decision making. Now, decision making comes down to repetition and doing things consistently. That's through practice. But also, I mean, what we'll do is as quarterbacks, if it's watching film together or before practice, we'll do walkthroughs, just the quarterbacks, and we'll imagine the defense. Like I tell my guys all the time, like you could be in your dorm room, you could be at home with your parents and just in your bedroom, and if you have a mirror, you can walk through and imagine the play itself, right? So I think again, visualization is a big thing pre-practice, during practice. And these aren't necessarily drills, but these are just things you can do as a coach to emphasize to the player, hey, like if we're going to do a drill before practice, everything we do has to be a game-like mentality, right? It has to be preparation for the game to practice like the game. In practice itself, for me, I've had quarterbacks the past 3.5 years here that are 5'9", 6'4". Like there's a like I don't really care how tall you are. Can you play football? That's the biggest thing. So for me, quick release is a big thing. Can you get the ball out fast? So because it doesn't matter if it's coming from up here or from here, get the ball out fast and evade the rush, right? So quick release is a big thing. The ability to be very accurate. So quick release, accurate, and decision making for me are the biggest components of quarterback. As I talked about, decision making comes down to preparation and repetition and learning and making the correct decisions throughout your opportunities. Quick release, there's a lot of drills for that. We'll do I call it, I grew up playing baseball, so a lot of baseball drills that I incorporate in football, more or less. We have a drill called shortstop, like the shortstop in baseball, where he'll flip his hips. So, for example, we'll be two quarterbacks that are facing opposite way, or one's facing one way and one's facing the other way. I'll give a go command, a go call. He'll about 55% kind of a power walk, almost a jog opposite. I'll say ball, And what he will do is he'll flip his hips around so we can get his hips to target and have to, turn a double play per se, like a shortstop. So things like that, we want to be quick but also accurate. And we'll also have the same drill where called the gunslinger drill, like back in the day, Cowboys when you pull your gun out and you the fast draw, same thing. We want to be quick, but we want to be accurate. So for me, that's a drill that we do as well as another drill we do. If it's RPO or if it's quick game screens, I'll purposely, if I'm the center snapping him the ball, I'll purposely throw a bad snap. I'll throw a high snap, a low snap, so that way he's like, "Oh, coach, it's a bad snap." It happens in the game, happens all the time. You know what I mean? So like, and at the end of the day, quarterback, you're going to get blamed for a lot of things. You're going to get credit for things you don't deserve. If you did something, it wasn't even your responsibility, but something went well, you get credit for that. And you're going to get blamed for things that aren't your fault. So at the end of the day, you're the one that touches the ball every single time. So you have to, no excuses. So if that's what we do kind of here to kind of make it more game-like. Running back wise, again, anything change direction. So for example, change of direction is a big thing, taking care of the football, don't turn the football over. I think that's for me even more important. So for example, we'll do a turnover circuit here with our running backs, whether it be through a gauntlet or having one hand on the ground, one hand on the ball. Certain teammates are trying to punch the ball out, or if it's through a bag or whatever it may be. So that's a big thing. Change direction, the ability to take care of the football at the running back position. Receivers, again, a lot of different type of body types, but overall, again, change direction. For me, the consistency of route running is a big thing, because obviously as a quarterback, you're going to get if you're a wide receiver, you get the football more often by being in the right place at the right time, right when the quarterback expects you to be there. So, it's like, well, I was open. Well, you weren't open when I was expecting you to be there. So for me, we'll do drills like routes on air, which I know everybody does that, so it's not anything new, but just the timing, consistency, in terms of being where you're supposed to be. And it comes back to, again, just being able to take the coaching points of, if for example, if you're throwing quick game, this is actually a great drill we do here. Our receiver coach does this pretty much every other day, where we'll throw a quick drill like a hitch or a screen or whatever, preferably like hitches or slants. And once our receivers catch the football, the other receivers that just ran a route have to now transition to blocking. So right, it's like a coaching point of become a pass catcher, and once the ball is thrown to somebody else, immediately become a blocker for your teammate. So it's kind of one of those things where again, practice becomes a game-like situation. And then from a DB perspective, again, the ability to flip your hips, transition high point balls. A lot of this stuff is not necessarily revolutionary in terms of football drills. They're very basic, but the more consistent you can be at the basic things, the better you can be at a lot of different things. I think that's what we always, even from a football standpoint, my job as a coach is to make things simple, not overcomplicated. That's like my job is to simplify things. And once they can master the simple things, we can add more and more and more. So that's what I would say, honestly, kind of from me talking this whole time is just simplify things as best as possible. And once they master the simple things, you can expand on more, you know, more drills. So.
Okay, okay, that's great. And you talk about the physical qualities of the positions, or well, the players, right? What physical qualities tend to decline first when athletes are not recovering properly?
Yeah, I mean, fatigue again is a big thing of that in terms of not taking care, or it's not taking care of their bodies, or if it's more or less the improper preparation for game situations, warm up or whatever. I mean, the first thing obviously is just the ability to be on the football field, whether it be the ability to last 4 quarters, right? So whether that be speed or change direction, but a big thing too, we have pillars in our program. We always talk about be smart, play fast, be physical, and be fundamental. Well, it comes down to a few things where if you're not playing fast and being smart about it, you can't be fundamental. So the biggest thing I would say is just the fundamentals start to go down once a player is.
Okay, okay, thank you. So you would say that the first thing that we have to do is be fundamental. I mean, be basic, right?
Yeah, I think it goes down to just like I said, keeping things simple. And once you keep things simple, it allows the players to play fast because um, from a fatigue standpoint, the fundamentals are the biggest thing. So if you're unable to, the first thing that will go is your if you
Uy, creo que perdimos al coach. Denos un par de minutitos.
do you guys hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Apologies. My connection went out. I apologize for that. But what I was saying was again, just from a fatigue standpoint, right? So if a player, the first thing that will go with is his fundamentals because if he doesn't have those fundamentally sound, playing smart, playing fast, and not consistently doing those from a preparation standpoint, those are the things that will go first. But as I talked about, if a player does get fatigued and has good fundamentals, what he can do is rely on his fundamentals because it goes back to saying, hey, although I am tired, although throughout the course of the game I am becoming more fatigued, if I do those simple drills, if I do those simple things effectively over and over again, I can go back to my fundamentals and that will push me through and carry me through that type of adversity. So,
Okay. So right now, well, basically what I've seen as a coach is that kids or young athletes, they put too much importance, too much, mm, yeah, importance in the muscle size, right? It's like they want to be shredded, they want to be big, they want to, but as you're saying right now, they have to focus on the movement, right?
yeah.
To the quality of the movement, the way they develop their skills and the way they perform in the field, right? Hey, so do you think that, well, how can we compare to these young athletes? Because if we saw the NFL, the NFL players, the running backs, the wide receivers, I think it met, right? They are big, they are strong. How can we put this in their minds? Because basically, as you mentioned, not everybody is in the same size, not
Yeah.
everybody have the same strength. How can we put this on their minds?
Well, the first one, the easiest one is those are grown men. Those are 22, 23, 20, 30 year old grown human beings. Obviously, it's easy to look at as a 14, 15 or 16-year-old player like that's what they want to be, and that's great to have those goals to be physical like that. But that's the number one thing I would say is you're not 24 years old yet. You may have the opportunity to look like that one day, but ultimately it's about starting small and building upon it. Like I said, so for us, obviously our guys when they come to our program and they're here for two a year and a half, 2 years, they obviously build, muscle definition and size, but that comes with anything, of course. So, but it goes back, like I said, repetition, doing things consistently. But yeah, to your point, there's different types of body types, and people can be successful at any size. They just have to be able to put the muscle memory work in, right? So that's what I would say. It's just you have to be consistent as a player of doing what you're supposed to do, regardless of what that may be, off season wise or in season, and just knowing that if you follow the plan, what either your coaches are trying to get you to do, or if you have a set goal for yourself. I always talked about when I was a player, it was the same way. I only cared about the destination, not the journey per se, right? So all I cared about was playing at the Division I level or playing at a certain stadium or whatever. But looking back, the reality is the journey is so much more satisfying because once you get to where you want to be, it's hard to stay there. It's hard to be at that level, but getting there is a lot more challenging than it is just being there. So that's why I would tell players at a young age, just enjoy the journey itself of building your body and or becoming a better football player in general, because ultimately it's going to be much more rewarding and satisfying once you do make it and whatever your goals are and whatever level that is, um, that you put the work in, you knew you put the time to do it. So.
And so, what would you say that are the most common mistakes that young athletes in these skilled positions commonly make in the talking about their physical development?
Yeah, it's a great question. I had to think about it. I mean, ultimately, again, it comes back to just doing things performance based, right? Everything's not going to look pretty like on Instagram or like whatever. Like it doesn't have to be a pretty drill. It doesn't have to be a cool drill. I mean, some of the most basic, like I said, the most basic drills are going to make a better football player or a better athlete in general. So don't get twisted with all the hype on certain fads or trends on training methods. Now, obviously, there's some research into some new things, of course, but I think overall, it's just about. And I'm not repeating myself, but it kind of just comes back to just making sure you do the fundamental things consistently. And from a young age, I think it's definitely needing to be a lot more performance based as opposed to just aesthetically, right? Obviously, if you're playing football, there's different weight. There's so many different guys. Like for example, Hunter Renfrow is a guy that comes to my thought process. Played for the Clemson and Oakland Raiders. A slot receiver type of guy against, for example, DK Metcalf or a guy like Calvin Johnson or Randy Moss, for example. And he doesn't look like the same type of receiver, but he's a great football player. And I think that goes down to again his ability to be conditioned and be athletic and route running. So again, to your question, mistakes that young players may make, it's just the ability to maybe do improper training or drills that seem cool, but they're not going to benefit them in the long run from a performance standpoint. So just doing things that benefit you from a football player aspect and making you a better athlete overall.
Thank you. And what should the coaches um, most prioritize in the development of the players? I mean, what do we have to see on them in order to become them a better player?
And you mean just the overall? Do you mean the weight room, or what do you mean?
In the in the training, I mean, for these physical abilities and all that kind of stuff, uh, what does the coaches need to be aware, or what do they need to focus on?
I would probably say every player is different. I guess. I mean, you know, obviously, if you want to build a culture from a football standpoint, you're going to have to be tough on your players in general. Um, but it also goes down to like there's a saying, if you want results, you put the work in, as I kind of alluded to from a player standpoint, but it's also catering the training specifically to the type of player that you're working with, right? So, for example, like some players respond to coaching differently than some others do, right? And I think that's a big thing as far as you're not going to necessarily baby anybody, but you have to be individualistic in terms of the way you coach people because everybody's different. We talk to people differently and we interact with people differently. So understanding that the way you speak to your quarterback may be different than how you speak to your running back or your receiver or your DBs or whatever. Um, so I think that's some element of it, not the overall lying factor. There's some element of just being able to know who your people are, who your players are, and how you get the most out of them. Because for me, when I was playing, like for example, I always enjoyed playing on the road versus playing home because I enjoyed people booing. I enjoy like it's just small things like that where you need to know your players. So like for example, you're on the road and you have to get more out of them, and you can talk a little more smack to your own player because that gets them going or whatever it may be. And this is kind of off topic there, but I think it's just some reality of just knowing your guys, right? Knowing what makes them tick, what makes them go, and pushing them as much as possible. Because again, a job as a coach is to get the most you can out of your players in whatever possible way that is. And if that means going above and beyond, the normal quote unquote method of just a standard approach to coaching, every coach should have a method that is individualistic to them, but at the same time being able to apply it to who you have as players, and again how they respond to the individual coaching they receive. So
Okay, so basically, it would be for the coaches, you have to know your people, you have to know your players.
yeah.
Okay, and another thing, well, from another perspective, what habits separate these elite players from average players?
Well, you just said it, the habits. That's what separates it. I mean, like I know I'm repeating myself, but it's just this truth. I mean, like the difference between a great player and a good player on paper, it could be stats or whatever, but in reality, it's little details, especially at the elite level. Like the NFL, I love how people like the average person always talks crap about NFL players. Like, dude, there's a reason they're in the NFL. They are elite athletes. They are elite football players. Now, there's an obvious difference between a guy who makes the Hall of Fame versus a guy who barely makes a 53-man roster, but at the end of the day, they're at the NFL for a reason. They can play at a certain level. So at that level, it's very small percentages, right? Like it comes down to your work ethic, your preparation. So in terms of the question, what separates them is the little details consistently doing the right thing over and over again. And whether that be in your training preparation or you're the weight room, doing an extra rep, going above and beyond when a coach tells you to do a drill, you don't just do the drill, you finish the drill. I think those things for me, when I was a player, now as a coach, you see it more because you have a different perspective, of course. But I think that's what separates at least the players I've been around, the elite ones from good to average, is just them doing things consistently well within the minute details over and over again.
Would you say that football in an elite level is more mental or physical?
At an elite level, I mean, at the NFL level, again, everybody's freaky, everybody's big and fast and strong. So at that level, obviously it's physical, and there's no question about that. But what separates at that level, at the elite level, is the mental capacity to process. I mean, there's no question about it. So
Yeah, totally. And from this perspective, how can we tell that to our players?
yeah, I mean, it's again, it comes down to, as I kind of talked about, is getting them exposed to more football in general. Making them understand that if you want to get to an elite level, first and foremost, you have to be, again, athletic and physical. But you know, there's a lot of guys that become really football players because they know what to do, they know where to be, they know how to do it. There's a lot of guys I've been around in my entire life, and even in the past couple of years, you see like they look like a lot of football. They look like a lot of young people. Like they're 15 to 16-year-old. They don't necessarily stand out from a KPI standpoint. They're not necessarily huge or necessarily super fast, but they're really good football players because they're instinctive and they know what to do. They're smart. They're intelligent. They process the game well. And obviously, if you can combine those elements with being an athlete, it puts you in a great position to get more opportunities at the next level. But how do you teach young people that, understanding that? Well, again, exposing them to as much football as you can. And if that means in the off season, for example, if they're playing other sports or they're doing like 7-on-7 or whatever it may be, you just have to surround them with more understanding and knowledge. So, for example, like for us in the offseason quarterbacks, we have training periodically. Like obviously, when we finish playing games in November, December, from January to March is more strength and conditioning focus, running, jumping, lifting. But we still will watch film. And we'll watch film from the last season, and we'll say, hey, like let's go watch all the third downs from this last year. Hey, let's go watch all the red zone from this last year, whatever it is. And they start seeing defenses and watching people and learning more about things. So you can never watch enough football, or you can never watch enough anything to learn. I think that's the last thing I'll say on that is the minute you stop trying to learn and think you know everything, you know absolutely nothing. That's just the reality of it. You have to consistently be a student in everything you do because if you stop learning, you're not actually staying the same, you're getting worse. So that's what I would say. Always strive to learn.
Thank you about that. Okay, so uh, just to close the session, could you mark or could you give us some kind of information about how the players must be trained? I mean, with this part, I want to provide the coaches the the way of they must be thinking about. I mean, as you mentioned, we have to get to know our players, but for the coaches, how they can manage that part. I mean, how they can give them that that yeah, to be closer to their players.
Time, I think that's the biggest thing is putting in the time when you're not on the clock per se, right? Like football is it's a it's a 24 hour, not 24 hours, but it's 18 hour job. Even if it's not your job, if it's something you care about, like for example, I lived in Germany for a few years, and there's a lot of like the quote unquote professional leagues out there where some players, for example, have jobs where they work outside of football, but they're sending with coaches. So I tell people if anything in life you care about, you're going to put the time to do it. So, for example, if you love football, regardless if it's your full time job, your part-time job, or if you're a volunteer or whatever it is, if you love it and you're willing to put the work in to be successful, you're going to have to put time in. That's just the reality of it. So if that means hanging out with having like a team function where you guys everybody gets together and you have a barbecue and you get to learn about each other, because that's at the end of the day, football and understanding all the elements are a big component of it. But as I talked about, and as you alluded to again about getting to know your players or just knowing your people, you have to just spend time with them. Like that, that's just the reality of it. Because at the end of the day, like it's not always about football. Sometimes we're just hanging out. We're watching basketball, or we're watching baseball, or we're watching whatever. So I think we're playing a tennis table, ping pong, whatever it is. So as much time you can spend with your players and learn about them outside of football. How their families doing? How is their sister or their brother doing? I think that's a big thing too, because you know it's football only lasts so long. That's the reality of it. Um, at the end of the day, it's a very violent physical sport. So we're only blessed with so many opportunities to play this game. And I think at the end of the day, it comes down to what's bigger than football. It's people and life in general. So I think the more you can get to know your people, and the more you can be around them, spend as much time as you can with them, your players, your coaches, everybody else, a part of the organization, talking about things other than football. And then once you do that, you learn more about the people themselves.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I think the same way as you said. Um, and one more question. In the metrics, what
Mm.
does the coaches must evaluate on their athletes? I mean, you mentioned that every athlete is different, but I think that to be consistent, we have to evaluate them and to probably uh, put them in the correct measurement, right? How or what are those skills or times? What you evaluate on them?
I'm sorry, I was the audio had broken up. Can you repeat that question one more time for me, please?
Yeah, sure. I was saying that what does the coaches must evaluate on their athletes? I mean, in the metrics, in terms of the speed for each position, QBs, DBs, running backs.
Yeah. I mean, as far as like numbers, you mean? I guess. I mean, again, every if excluding quarterback, because quarterback's a very unique position in terms of there's different guys like Tom Brady or Lamar Jackson, but it's a very different skill set. But um, I guess from running back standpoint, like I said, a big drill that we definitely emphasize is a 5-10-5 drill. Obviously the shuttle drill, the ability to change direction quick and out of your breaks. We've had guys, elite guys, at least at a 16 to 18-year-old range here at our program or combines we've shown or not shown we've hosted. Uh, the elite guys are running between 3.95. Well, that's too fast. I would probably say like 4 to 4.28, 4.3. That's elite, especially at a young age. Um, so that's the metric we definitely look for. And then from a receiver standpoint, same thing. But more importantly, probably an L cone drill, be able to change direction, drop your hips. Again, elite. I've had some quarterbacks even running below 7. So, I mean, at a young age, if you're 16, 15 years old, 17 years old, if you say you want to be elite and look from a metric standpoint, again, numbers are just numbers, but if you're running below 7 and you're a young athlete at an Elcone drill, you're already having a lot of promise as far as your potential to change direction, right? So I guess that would be the numbers as far as metrics you could look for. For example, when we have combines, when we see guys run that, we go, "Oh, who is that person? Who is that player?" Because that's a skill set that could translate obviously to football in a lot of ways. So
Okay, thank you, Coach. Thank you for all the information. And just to close the call, let me ask to the other people if they have any other questions, something to ask you.
perfect.
Em, Muchísimas gracias por estar todos presentes. Estamos ya cerrando la parte de la conferencia. Si tienen alguna pregunta que le quieran hacer al coach Clayton, estamos abiertos. Si quieren escribirla, este, estamos aquí al pendiente. Le damos un par de segunditos y si la quieren escribir en español, si la quieren dejar ahí al aire, no hay ningún problema, ¿sale? Y nuevamente les recordamos, nuestra siguiente sesión va a ser la siguiente semana, el día miércoles, igual a las 11 de la mañana. Una disculpita por el delay ahí en la parte del tiempo. Estamos igual a las 11 de la mañana y me parece que en la siguiente sesión vamos a estar viendo las posiciones de la línea, es decir, linieros ofensivos, linieros defensivos, todo este tipo de posiciones que están un poquito más enfocadas en esta parte de la fuerza, el poder, ¿vale? Quedamos pendientes ahí si tienen alguna preguntita, lo que quieran hacer, igual los invitamos a abrir su micrófono para platicar con el coach directamente, ¿vale? Well, I think that there's no other questions. And well, we have a message. Let me look for it. Um, Yvonne says, thank you very much. Excellent information. Thank you for the great talk.
Awesome. I'm glad to be able to hop on the call.
Um, Thank you again. All your knowledge is really important, and we hope that if you can work with us more often, that would be awesome. Because I know that you are very busy, and the time zone also is struggling sometimes. Because I know probably well, Chris said that in your time zone is 5 hours late.
I think from Mexico City it's 6 hours actually. Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah. It's difficult sometimes. But thank you again, Coach. Thank you for giving us all your knowledge or information. And yeah, that's basically all. Thank you. Thank you.
Of course, again, like I said, we love having these calls, love having these conversations, especially we think we definitely feel that football players from Mexico have a lot of potential, a lot of talent, which is obviously why we've noticed in the past year and a half of having more guys that we've thought about reaching out to and joining our program. And I think even as you alluded to, giving more resources and knowledge and having conversations with people, that's what it's all about. It's about giving information and learning. So.
Yeah, thank you. And we all, as coaches and as a nutritionist, all the staff must be informed about this kind of stuff, right? This kind of topics, because it's really important to provide this information to our players, to our new talented players, right?
Yep.
So we have to guide them, we have to inform them, and we have to provide them the most the most valuable information that we have.
Exactly. Yep.
So thank you again, Coach. Have a great day, and we hope to have you another time here.
Yeah, of course. Again, I appreciate it, and we'll talk soon. Then have a good day.
You too. Have a great day. Bye bye.
Yeah. Bye bye.